Imagine spending years building a peaceful life in your own home, only to have it shaken by rules and people who never truly understood you. That's what happened to Marcus, a hard-working man who loved nothing more than relaxing by his pool after long days. For him, that pool wasn't just water and tiles, it was freedom, family, and joy. But one day, everything changed. The HOA began complaining about the size, the noise, and even the placement of his pool. Neighbors whispered, notes appeared on his door, and it felt like every splash of water carried judgment. Marcus stayed calm, believing kindness would solve the problem. Yet, no matter what he did, the complaints only grew louder. And so, with a heavy heart, Marcus decided to take down his own pool, brick by brick, piece by piece, hoping it would finally bring peace. But just when he thought it was over, a familiar figure appeared at the edge of his yard. The sound of footsteps on gravel made Marcus pause. It was Karen, the HOA member known for her sharp voice and sharper eyes. She stood tall, arms folded, looking at the half-dismantled pool like it was evidence of a crime. "You should have asked first," she said, her tone dripping with control. Marcus wiped the sweat from his forehead, exhausted yet steady. He explained softly that it was his choice, his property, and that he didn't want trouble anymore. But Karen didn't listen. She saw authority in the HOA's handbook and believed it gave her the right to decide what Marcus could or couldn't have. As he turned back to his work, thinking the matter was closed, she pulled out her phone. Marcus didn't realize then that her next move wasn't another letter or fine, it was something far more public and humiliating. Minutes later, the flashing red and blue lights pierced the quiet neighborhood. Neighbors peeked through curtains as two police officers stepped out of their cars. Marcus froze, a knot forming in his chest. He wasn't breaking any law, wasn't disturbing anyone, yet here he was, standing in front of the law. Karen stood proudly by the officers, pointing to the yard as though she had uncovered a great scandal. The officers approached Marcus, asking questions that sounded less like concerns and more like accusations. Why was he tearing down the pool? Was it permitted? Was there a violation? Marcus answered calmly, his voice steady but heavy with disbelief. He had worked hard to build his life, and now, in front of everyone, it was being picked apart. But what Karen didn't know was that the strength in Marcus's voice wasn't just defense, it was the beginning of something far stronger than her accusations. The tension in the air was undeniable. Karen expected Marcus to lose his temper, to argue, to give her proof she was right. But instead, he chose dignity. He explained to the officers that he wasn't breaking any law, that the HOA's complaints were personal and had no legal ground. His quiet courage unsettled Karen, because control was slipping from her hands. The officers, listening closely, began to realize the truth. One of them asked Karen if she had actual evidence of wrongdoing. Her silence said more than her words ever could. For Marcus, the moment was bittersweet. He had lost his pool, but he hadn't lost his peace. And as the officers began to turn away, Marcus understood something powerful. No matter how much pressure the HOA tried to put on him, he had something they could never take: his voice, his dignity, and the truth. One evening, Marcus sat on his porch, the sun sinking low behind the trees, when a knock came at his door. To his surprise, it wasn't Karen, it was a group of neighbors. They came not with complaints, but with support. One by one, they shared their own stories of being pressured, fined, or humiliated by the HOA. Marcus realized he wasn't alone. What had happened in his backyard had opened a door for others to speak up, to finally share the frustrations they had kept hidden. In that moment, Marcus understood that his pool being torn down wasn't just an ending, it was the beginning of a bigger fight, one that could unite the community against unfair control. For the first time in weeks, he smiled, knowing that change might just start from his story. The next HOA meeting was unlike any before. The room was filled, not with silence and fear, but with voices, neighbors who had found the courage to speak. Marcus didn't yell, didn't accuse, he simply told his story, every detail, every emotion, every injustice. His words carried weight because they came from truth, not anger. Karen sat quietly, realizing that the authority she once held was slipping, replaced by unity and strength among the people she had tried to silence. Marcus looked around the room and felt something he hadn't in a long time: hope. He may have lost his pool, but he had gained something far greater: respect, solidarity, and the knowledge that one voice could spark change. And as he left the meeting that night, he understood that real freedom wasn't in water or walls, it was in standing tall, even when others tried to push you down. the story didn't end with the meeting. In the weeks that followed, something remarkable began to happen. Neighbors who once walked past each other in silence started greeting one another with warmth. Families who had hidden their frustrations with the HOA began speaking up, forming a bond that Karen could no longer control. Marcus found himself at the center of this quiet movement, not because he wanted power, but because people trusted him. They saw in him someone who had endured humiliation with dignity and turned pain into strength. One afternoon, children played freely in his yard again, not in a pool, but in the open space where laughter replaced silence. Marcus watched with a smile, realizing he hadn't lost anything at all. He had simply traded one pool for an ocean of respect and unity. And for the first time, the community felt alive, stronger together than they had ever been apart. As the community grew closer, Marcus noticed something different in the way people looked at him. There was no pity, no judgment, only gratitude. One day, an elderly neighbor approached him with trembling hands, holding a stack of old HOA letters she had hidden for years. Fines, threats, warnings, her fear had kept her silent. "I thought I was alone," she whispered, her voice heavy with relief. Marcus gently placed his hand on the papers and said, "You're not alone anymore." That moment became a turning point. Neighbors started organizing, sharing stories, and gathering the courage to challenge unfair rules together. Karen, once the loudest voice in the neighborhood, now found her words drowned out by the unity she never expected. Marcus didn't just take down a pool, he helped take down fear. And as the autumn leaves fell across his yard, he realized the true meaning of community, people standing side by side, stronger than any rulebook.